Hi, and welcome back to this Monday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. You are listening to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Honored and pleased to welcome to our decision maker line John Guandolo. He is a counterterrorism expert. He created and implemented the FBI's first counterterrorism training education program. He's a former FBI agent who was assigned to the Counterterrorism Division of Washington, D.C. He's the founder of UnderstandingTheThreat.com and co-author of the book Sharia, The Threat to America. He has got a soon-to-be-released book coming out. Mr. Guandolo, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Thank you very much. It's great to be on.
Well, it's good to have you with us, John, and particularly because you're up to speed on the whole issue of counterterrorism and completely aware, this is something we've covered often on this program, the threat that the Muslim Brotherhood represents to the United States of America. So maybe what you could do, John, before we jump into some of the other details, is tell our listening audience, in case they haven't heard, a concise description of the Muslim Brotherhood and what their agenda is in North America. Catch us up to speed.
Okay, that's a big, tall order, but I'll do it in 2 minutes, I hope. Well, I think just to start with is the Muslim Brotherhood is here, and they have a huge network in the United States and in North America. And the best starting point, I think, for a brief understanding is in 2004, the FBI's Washington field office raided a home of a senior Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood leader here in the United States, and that was in Annandale, Virginia. And in the basement of the residence, the FBI discovered the archives of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. Numerous financial records, documents listing organizations, leaders, photographs, audio tapes, strategic documents that specifically laid out what they're doing, how they're doing it, and who's involved. It was an absolute treasure trove. And a lot of these documents ended up being entered into evidence in the largest Hamas and terrorism financing trial in U.S. history, something called the United States versus Holy Land Foundation, which was in Dallas, Texas, adjudicated in 2008. And let me just summarize very briefly what the evidence revealed. First of all, Holy Land Foundation, at the time it was indicted, was the largest Islamic charity in America, and it was a front for Hamas. It was convicted of sending over $12 million to Hamas. And that's the largest Islamic charity in America and its leaders were also convicted and given heavy sentences.
John, if I could interject here just for a second, this was a Holy Land Foundation. It's presented to the world as a charitable organization, but aren't almost all Islamic charities simply fundraising fronts for global terrorism? Is that an exaggeration?
Well, let me maybe explain it a little more specifically, because this is important that we say this right, is that, first of all, the evidence in Holy Land reveals that the vast majority of Islamic organizations in the United States are a part of what the trial and the evidence revealed is an Islamic movement in the United States. It's led by the Muslim Brotherhood, and the largest and most prominent Islamic organizations are a part of that movement. When it comes to the funding, and let me first say, before I talk about the funding, the very first national Islamic organization in the United States was created in 1963, and that's the Muslim Students Association, and that was created by the Muslim Brotherhood. And today there are over 600 chapters in the United States at every major college university, and they exist to recruit men for the jihad and for the Muslim Brotherhood. So that right there ought to give people some indication of how significant the threat is. When we talk about funding, yes, it is a requirement. The Brotherhood says unequivocally that what they are seeking is to overthrow non-Islamic governments and impose Islamic law and create Islamic governments. The mechanism for raising money, one of the mechanisms through charity that they utilize is Zakat, and Zakat is a requirement in Islam that Muslims give a certain percentage of their money to Zakat. And 1/8 under Islamic law, authoritative Islamic law, 1/8 of the money must go to jihad. Now, there are other categories, such as the needy and others, where families of martyrs are also supported, but it is a legal requirement in Islamic law that 1/8 of all money raised goes to fund jihad, and that's very clear.
It's interesting, John. All this multiculturalism, all religions are basically equal. They're all of equal worth. They're all of equal value. They're all equally valid. I go to a church, and we were just reminded yesterday that of the money that we give to our church, it's voluntary, of course, but of the money that we give to our church, 11% is taken right off the top, and it's devoted to missions. It's devoted to taking the light of the gospel of Jesus Christ to the darkened corners of the world. And you contrast that, John. I just struck with the contrast here in Islam. 1/8 of what you give, roughly the kind of same amount, that same percentage that we designate as a church to evangelism, they are obligated to give to further the cause of violent jihad against the West.
Yes, and I would, if I may, I'd like to take about 30 or 40 seconds and read directly from Islamic law, because I think your listeners would be a little shocked. First of all, I'm reading from a book of Islamic law that's 14th century Islamic law. You can get this on Amazon. It's called Reliance of the Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
It's published in Beltsville, Maryland, and yet inside it has the imprimatur both of the senior Muslim Brotherhood organizations in North America saying this is good law, and Al-Azhar University, which is the most preeminent school of Islamic law in the world, says this is good law. And what it does is it says, first, the 8 categories of recipients of zakat. It is obligatory to distribute one zakat among the 8 category, meaning that zakat goes to none besides them, 1/8 to each category. And then it names the 8 categories. And category 7 says those fighting for Allah. The 7th category is those fighting for Allah, meaning people engaged in Islamic military operations for whom no salary has been allotted in the Army roster, but who are volunteers for jihad without remuneration. They are given enough to suffice them for the operations, even if affluent, of weapons, mounts, clothing, and expenses for the duration of the journey. Now, that's straight out of Islamic law. That's authoritative, approved by the most authoritative sources in Islam, to include, by the way, the Muslim Brotherhood, saying that's good law. So when U.S. Muslim charities receive zakat on websites, they are actually, as a matter of legal fact, because they tell you this is what they do with their money, they're sending at least a portion of it to what we would call terrorism.
Now, we know from the statement, we know from Muslim Brotherhood documents what their goal is in North America, and you've quoted it in your book, eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house. So their goal, this is the goal of the Muslim Brotherhood, this is the goal of the Muslim Student Associations, this is the goal of the Council on American Islamic Relations, this is the goal of the Islamic Society of North America. I think Muslim Brotherhood's got like 29 different organizations affiliated with it, and people don't realize they're all part of the same web, the same network, because they have different names. But their goal is to eliminate and destroy Western civilization. And I'm assuming, John, that this collection of this zakat and siphoning off 12% of it to fund jihad, that's going on today under our noses. I mean, to me, that's an act of treason. What should we do about that?
Well, certainly the first thing that should be done is these organizations should be charged. And you can actually, it's not a tough legal road, hurdle to get over. Because once you do what you actually just did, you take a book of Islamic law that they say is good law, and they put their stamp and they sign it saying the Sikh Council of North America and other Muslim Brotherhood, senior Muslim Brotherhood organizations say this is good law. We seek to impose it. Here's how we're going to do it. And you can walk this down and say, well, all these organizations are part of the Brotherhood, so this is what they're trying to do. So now we know that 1/8 of their money is going. Now we just need to figure out how they're doing it. And then we can charge them. That's it. It's not, you don't have to do an investigation to determine are they. They are. You already know that. And that's what's fascinating is this government, specifically this Attorney General, in the Holy Land Foundation, there were over 300 unindicted co-conspirators, and the FBI was working to indict several others, including the Council on American Islamic Relations, and this Attorney General turned that process off a couple of years ago.
Talking here with John Guandolo, counterterrorism expert, former FBI agent. In fact, the first counterterrorism training education program designee for the FBI. And I understand, John, that the military's gone through, and I'm guessing, I'm just assuming that this is your work. I mean, they've basically gone through and expunged virtually all of the training materials in the FBI archives or FBI curriculum that would tell the honest truth about Islam. Is that correct?
Yes, any reference to those materials, and there were about 3 agents in the FBI that were teaching this. Their work on the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamic law, on jihad, how it relates to how these guys operate, that's all been whitewashed by the FBI director. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, along with others in the military, ensured that these programs, Joint Forces Staff College, the Army War Colleges, the other war colleges, all these discussions about who the enemy is based on who the enemy says he is and on their doctrine, it's been removed. So there is no training program inside the military, civilian, law enforcement, intelligence community that now teaches the people trying to find the enemy and fight the enemy who the enemy is.
One last question, John. I only got 15 seconds. I'm sorry to keep it short, but there's, I think, a fairly well substantiated rumor or speculation that John Brennan may himself be a convert to Islam. Do you have a take on that? Yes or no? What do you think?
He is. There's evidence. There are people who were firsthand when he was the station chief for the CIA in Saudi Arabia that he said the Shahada in front of senior members of the Saudi government, and that is what's required.
Our guest has been John Guandolo, author of the brand new book, soon to be released, Sharia, The Threat to America. Highly recommend you get it. John, thank you for being with us. God bless you for what you do.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.